My sister cheated on her husband with her boss. I stood up for my bill and got disowned. 2 years later, my sister's shocking manipulation came to light. I never thought I'd be in this situation, but here I am, questioning everything I thought I knew about my family. I'm Emily, 28F, and I've always been close to my older sister Sarah, 32F, and our parents, Brett, 58M, and Linda, 55F. We grew up in a small town in Ohio, where everyone knew everyone else's business. Our parents ran a successful local bakery, and we spent many afternoons helping out after school, covered in flour and giggling over inside jokes. Sarah was always the golden child, beautiful, outgoing, and effortlessly popular. I was more introverted, preferring books and art to parties. Despite our differences, we were inseparable. Sarah always looked out for me, standing up to bullies and including me in her friend groups even when I felt out of place. I idolized her, and she never let me down. Our bond strengthened even more when I was 15 and Sarah was 19. I was diagnosed with depression after a particularly rough year at school. Sarah, who had just started college, would drive 2 hours every weekend to spend time with me. She'd bring me my favorite snacks, force me out of bed for walks in the park, and just sit with me when I couldn't find the energy to talk. Her unwavering support helped me through that dark time, and I'll always be grateful for it. Sarah met Rodney, 33M, during her sophomore year of college. They were in the same study group for an economics class, and Sarah would come home gushing about this funny, kind guy who always brought coffee for everyone. Rodney started showing up at our family dinners, and soon he was as much a part of our family as any of us. I remember the day Sarah told me Rodney had proposed. We jumped around her tiny apartment, screaming with joy like we were kids again. Their wedding was like something out of a fairy tale. Sarah looked radiant in our grandmother's restored wedding dress, and Rodney couldn't take his eyes off her. I was the maid of honor, and I'll never forget the moment Sarah squeezed my hand before walking down the aisle, whispering, "I'm so glad you're here with me, Em." A few years later, Sarah and Rodney welcomed their son, Ethan, 5M. They asked me to be his godmother, and I was over the moon. I threw myself into being the best aunt possible, babysitting whenever they needed a break, buying probably too many toys, and FaceTiming regularly to watch Ethan grow. Sarah seemed to have it all: a successful career as a bread executive, a loving husband, an adorable son, and our parents' constant praise and support. Meanwhile, I was building my own life. I moved to the city for college and stayed after graduation, landing a job at a nonprofit organization focused on environmental conservation. I dated here and there but never found anyone who clicked. Sarah would often try to set me up with Rodney's friends, always looking out for me even from afar. Everything changed last Thanksgiving. Our family gathered at Sarah and Rodney's house for the annual feast, a tradition we'd kept alive even as our lives got busier. I arrived early to help with preparations, and everything seemed normal at first. Sarah and I peeled potatoes and gossiped about our cousins while Rodney entertained Ethan in the living room. Our parents arrived with pies from the bakery, filling the house with a scent of cinnamon and nostalgia. As the day went on, I noticed Rodney was unusually quiet. He barely touched his food during dinner and kept glancing at Sarah with a pained expression. Sarah, on the other hand, seemed oblivious, chatting animatedly about a big project at work. I caught my mom giving Rodney concerned looks, but she didn't say anything. After dinner, while Sarah was putting Ethan to bed, Rodney pulled me aside. We went out to the back porch, and I'll never forget the defeated look on his face as he sat down on the steps. With tears in his eyes, he confessed that he had caught Sarah cheating on him with her boss, Alex, 45M. Rodney had suspected something was off for months: late nights at the office, secretive phone calls, a growing emotional distance. He didn't want to believe it, making excuses for her behavior and telling himself he was just being paranoid. But the night before Thanksgiving, he found explicit messages on Sarah's phone that confirmed his worst fears. I was stunned. This couldn't be my sister, the person I'd looked up to my whole life. I felt sick to my stomach, thinking about how Sarah had been living this double life while we all remained clueless. Rodney begged me not to confront Sarah yet, as he wanted to talk to her first. I agreed, but inside, I was furious. How could she do this to Rodney, to Ethan, to our family? The next day, everything exploded. Rodney confronted Sarah, and to my shock, she didn't even try to deny it. She claimed she had fallen out of love with Rodney years ago but stayed for Ethan's sake. She said Alex understood her in ways Rodney never could, that he challenged her intellectually and made her feel alive again. The argument got heated quickly, with accusations flying back and forth. Soon, our parents were involved, trying to mediate the situation. To my disbelief, my parents sided with Sarah. They told Rodney he must have done something to drive Sarah away, that marriages take work and he should try harder for Ethan's sake. My mom suggested they try couples counseling, while my dad implied that Rodney's long hours at his engineering job must have left Sarah feeling neglected. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I stood up for Rodney, telling Sarah that cheating was inexcusable, regardless of the circumstances. I reminded her of the vows she'd made, of the family she was tearing apart. Sarah turned on me then, accusing me of always being jealous of her happiness and success. She brought up my past struggles with depression, suggesting I was too emotionally unstable to understand adult relationships. Our parents jumped to Sarah's defense, telling me I was being judgmental and that families should stick together no matter what. They brought up all the times Sarah had been there for me, implying I owed her my loyalty now. I was shocked by their willingness to overlook Sarah's betrayal, to shift blame onto Rodney and me instead of holding her accountable. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. Rodney left the house in tears, and I followed him to make sure he was okay. We sat in his car for hours, Rodney alternating between crying and angry outbursts, while I tried to offer what comfort I could. When I finally went back inside, Sarah and my parents were huddled together in the kitchen, speaking in hushed tones. They stopped abruptly when they saw me, and the look of disdain on Sarah's face made me feel like a stranger in what had once been my second home. Over the next few weeks, the family divide grew deeper. Sarah moved in with Alex, taking Ethan with her. Rodney was devastated, struggling to see his son and navigate the sudden upheaval of his life. My parents continued to support Sarah unequivocally, even helping her move and babysitting Ethan so she could go on dates with Alex. They seemed more concerned with maintaining the appearance of a perfect family than addressing the real issues at hand. I tried to reason with my parents multiple times. I reminded them of the values they'd instilled in us growing up, the importance of honesty and commitment. But they wouldn't listen. They kept making excuses for Sarah's behavior, saying things like "you'll understand when you're married" or "it's complicated, Emily. Life isn't black and white." Every conversation turned into an argument, with them accusing me of being naive and overly critical. Sarah, for her part, seemed to revel in the drama. She'd call me late at night, alternating between tearful apologies and angry accusations. One moment she'd be asking for my understanding, the next she'd be threatening to cut me out of Ethan's life if I didn't support her choices. It was like talking to a stranger wearing my sister's face. The final straw came at a family dinner about a month after Thanksgiving. Sarah brought Alex, introducing him as her partner and acting as if nothing was amiss. My parents welcomed him warmly, and I watched in disbelief as they all chatted and laughed like old friends. When I refused to engage in the charade, my mom pulled me aside and told me to grow up and accept the new family dynamic. I'd had enough. I stood up, looked each of them in the eye, and said I couldn't stand by and watch them enable Sarah's destructive behavior. I told them I needed space from all of them and that I would be there for Rodney and Ethan, even if the rest of the family wouldn't. The room erupted into chaos. My parents accused me of being dramatic and tearing the family apart. Sarah called me a traitor, saying I was choosing Rodney over my own blood. But I stood my ground and walked out, ignoring their shouts and pleas. It's been 2 months now. I've been helping Rodney navigate the divorce process and spending time with Ethan when I can. Rodney's a mess, alternating between depression and anger, but he's trying his best to stay strong for Ethan. The little boy is confused and upset, not understanding why his family has been torn apart. It breaks my heart to see him like this, knowing the long-term effects this might have on him. My parents and Sarah have been calling and texting nonstop, alternating between guilt-tripping me and accusing me of overreacting. They'd even shown up at my apartment unannounced, trying to force a reconciliation. I've had to block their numbers and warn my building security about potential unwanted visitors. The hardest part is the loneliness. I've lost not just my sister, but my best friend. The person I used to call with every little triumph or setback is now a stranger to me. There are moments when I miss the easy companionship we once had, the inside jokes and shared memories. But then I remember what she's done, how she's hurt Rodney and Ethan, and my resolve strengthens. Part of me wonders if I'm being too harsh. They're my family, after all. We've been through so much together, and the thought of permanently fracturing those relationships terrifies me. But another part of me feels like I'm doing the right thing by standing up for what I believe is right. I can't just sweep this under the rug and pretend everything's okay. So, Reddit, Ida for cutting off my parents after they sided with my cheating sister? Am I overreacting, or am I justified in taking such a drastic step? I feel lost and could use some outside perspective. Update 1. It's been 3 months since my last post, and I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. I've read every comment, and your words have helped me stay strong through this difficult time. A lot has happened, and I'm still trying to process it all. First, the good news: Rodney finalized his divorce from Sarah. It wasn't easy, but he managed to get joint custody of Ethan. The judge didn't look kindly on Sarah's infidelity or her initial attempts to limit Rodney's time with his son. Rodney's doing better now, focusing on healing and being the best dad he can be to Ethan. He started seeing a therapist, which seems to be helping him work through his anger and betrayal. Ethan's adjusting as well as can be expected. He's in therapy too, playing with toys and drawing pictures to express his feelings about the divorce. It's heartbreaking to see him struggle, but I'm glad he's getting professional help. Rodney and I have been trying to maintain as much stability as possible for him, keeping to familiar routines and reassuring him that both his parents still love him. Now, for the not-so-good news. My relationship with my parents and Sarah has only gotten worse. About a month ago, they showed up unannounced at my apartment. I was shocked to see them standing there when I opened the door. Part of me wanted to slam it shut, but a smaller part hoped we could have a calm, rational discussion. I let them in, a decision I now regret. As soon as they were inside, any hope of a peaceful conversation evaporated. My mom started crying, saying I was tearing the family apart with my stubbornness. Dad accused me of being selfish and immature, saying I was punishing them all for Sarah's mistake. Sarah just stood there with a smug look on her face, as if she was enjoying the spectacle. I tried to explain my perspective calmly. I talked about how their unconditional support of Sarah was enabling her harmful behavior, how it was unfair to Rodney and damaging to Ethan. But they talked over me, dismissing everything I said. Mom brought up all the times Sarah had supported me, especially during my struggle with depression in high school. Dad said I owed it to the family to keep the peace and accept Sarah's choices. The final straw came when Sarah announced she was pregnant with Alex's baby. She looked at me expectantly, clearly thinking this news would change everything. She said, "You're going to be an aunt again, Em. Isn't it time to let go of this grudge and be happy for me?" I was stunned. All I could think about was Ethan, and how confused and hurt he would be by this news. When I didn't react with joy, Sarah exploded. She called me a bitter, jealous old maid who would never understand true love or the complexities of adult relationships. She said I was using Rodney to live out some pathetic fantasy of having a family of my own. That's when I lost it. I told them all to leave and never come back. I said I couldn't be part of a family that valued loyalty to a cheater over basic morality. I told Sarah she was selfish and short-sighted, and that I pitied her children for having such a poor example of integrity. My dad called me ungrateful, saying I owed everything to them and that I had no right to judge Sarah's choices. He brought up how they had supported me financially through college and my early career, implying that this debt meant I had to fall in line with their wishes. As they were leaving, my mom tried one last guilt trip. She said, "If you walk away from us now, don't expect to be welcomed back when you realize your mistake. Family is forever, Emily. You'll regret throwing us away." I closed the door without responding, then sank to the floor and cried for hours. Since then, they've enlisted extended family members to try and pressure me into reconciling. Aunts, uncles, and cousins have been calling, telling me to forgive and forget. Some have even threatened to cut me off if I don't make amends with my parents and Sarah. It's been overwhelming and emotionally exhausting. The one bright spot in all this has been my growing friendship with Rodney. We've bonded over our shared experiences with my family's toxicity. He's introduced me to a support group for divorced parents, and they've been wonderfully understanding. It's comforting to be around people who get it, who don't try to minimize or excuse what Sarah did. Rodney and I have started a tradition of Sunday brunches at my place. We make pancakes with Ethan, then spend the afternoon playing board games or going to the park. It gives Ethan a sense of family and routine, and honestly, it's become the highlight of my week too. Seeing Rodney smile and laugh again, watching Ethan slowly come out of his shell, it reminds me why I'm standing my ground despite how hard it is. I'm still firm in my decision to maintain distance from my parents and Sarah. It hurts every day. I miss the family I thought I had, the sister I used to look up to. There are moments when I'm tempted to call them, to try and smooth things over. But then I remember the look on Rodney's face when he told me about Sarah's affair, or I think about how confused and sad Ethan has been, and my resolve strengthens. I'm learning to create my own family with the people who truly care about me. My friends have been incredibly supportive, inviting me over for holidays and checking in regularly. I've even started volunteering at a local animal shelter, which has been a welcome distraction and a source of unconditional love from the dogs and cats. But I can't help wondering, am I still doing the right thing? Or am I being too stubborn, throwing away decades of family history over one mistake, albeit a big one? The loneliness gets overwhelming sometimes, and I worry about the long-term consequences of this estrangement. Any advice or perspective would be greatly appreciated. Update 2. It's been 6 months since my last update, and the situation has taken some unexpected turns. I appreciate everyone who's followed my story and offered advice. Your support has meant more than you know. The biggest news is that Sarah's relationship with Alex imploded spectacularly. It turns out he wasn't the knight in shining armor she thought he was. About 2 months ago, Sarah showed up at my door in tears. I was shocked to see her there, looking disheveled and nothing like her usual put-together self. Through her sobs, Sarah confessed that Alex had been cheating on her with multiple women at their office. She found out when one of Alex's colleagues, feeling guilty, sent her a series of incriminating emails and text messages. Sarah was devastated, saying she'd given up everything for Alex, only to have him betray her the same way she'd betrayed Rodney. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was satisfied by the karmic justice of it all, but seeing my sister so broken down also stirred up old protective instincts. I let her in, made her some tea, and listened as she poured out her heart. Sarah said she'd realized how wrong she'd been, how she'd thrown away a good marriage and hurt so many people for a relationship that was built on lies. She begged for my forgiveness, saying she wanted to make amends with Rodney and rebuild our family. At first, I was skeptical. Sarah had always been good at playing the victim when it suited her. But seeing her so vulnerable, so unlike the confident sister I'd grown up with, made me wonder if this could be a genuine change. Over the next few weeks, Sarah made efforts to apologize to Rodney and spend more time with Ethan. She even started seeing a counselor to work on her issues. I cautiously allowed her back into my life, hoping this was the turning point we all needed. My parents were overjoyed, thinking everything would go back to normal. They started pressuring Rodney to reconcile with Sarah, saying it was best for Ethan. Rodney, to his credit, remained firm. He told them he'd co-parent with Sarah, but their romantic relationship was over for good. Just when I thought things were improving, I discovered the truth. I was at Sarah's apartment, helping her sort through some paperwork for her divorce from Alex, when I overheard her on the phone in the other room. She was laughing, her tone completely different from the remorseful one she'd been using with us. Curious, I moved closer to the door and what I heard made my blood run cold. Sarah was talking to Alex, laughing about how easy it was to fool everyone. She admitted the cheating story was a lie, concocted to win back the family's sympathy. They were still together, planning to move to another city once Sarah got what she wanted from the divorce settlement with Rodney. I was furious. I burst into the room, confronting Sarah immediately. She didn't even try to deny it. She just smirked and said, "You always were too gullible, Em. Did you really think I'd give up everything for that loser Rodney?" I kicked her out of my apartment and called Rodney right away to warn him. He was hurt but grateful for the information. It turned out Sarah had been trying to manipulate him into a more favorable divorce settlement, using Ethan as leverage. When I told my parents what happened, they accused me of lying to stir up drama. They couldn't accept that their precious Sarah would do something so manipulative. Our argument ended with them telling me I was dead to them unless I apologized and accepted Sarah back unconditionally. I'm done. I've realized that no matter what Sarah does, my parents will always take her side. I can't keep hoping they'll see reason. I've decided to make a clean break. I'm changing my phone number and moving to a new apartment. Rodney and Ethan are the only family members I'm staying in contact with. It's been a hard decision, but I feel lighter already. I'm focusing on building a life surrounded by people who share my values and respect me. Rodney, Ethan, and my friends have been incredibly supportive. I know this update might seem unbelievable to some, but toxic family dynamics can bring out the worst in people. I'm sharing this to remind others that it's okay to prioritize your mental health over family obligations. Am I making the right choice by cutting ties completely? How do I move forward from here? Update 3. It's been a year since my last update, and I want to share how things have evolved. Life has a way of surprising you, and my situation is no exception. After cutting ties with my family, I threw myself into my work and personal growth. I got a promotion at my job, leading a new initiative to partner with local schools on environmental education programs. It's been challenging but incredibly rewarding. I've also started volunteering at a local animal shelter on weekends, which has been a great source of joy and companionship. To my surprise, I've discovered a passion for painting. It started as a way to process my emotions about the family situation, but it's grown into a serious hobby. I've even sold a few pieces at a local art fair, which was a huge confidence boost. Rodney and I have continued to grow closer. What started as mutual support through family trauma has blossomed into something more. About 6 months ago, we admitted our feelings for each other and decided to give a relationship a try. We've been taking it slow, always putting Ethan's well-being first. It's been wonderful to see Rodney smile again, to watch him rediscover his self-worth after everything Sarah put him through. Ethan has adjusted well to the changes. He's thriving in school and seems happier now that the tension between his parents has eased. Rodney and I make sure he knows he's loved and supported, no matter what. We've been honest with him about our relationship, answering his questions as best we can. He seems okay with it, even excited sometimes, but we're staying vigilant for any signs of discomfort. As for Sarah and my parents, I've heard bits and pieces through the grapevine. Sarah and Alex did move away, but their relationship didn't last. Last I heard, she was trying to reconnect with Rodney, but he's not interested in anything beyond co-parenting. My parents reached out around Christmas, leaving a voicemail that swung between guilt-tripping and angry accusations. I didn't respond. It was hard, but I realized that my peace of mind was more important than meeting their expectations. The most unexpected development came last month. My mom's sister, Aunt Carol, contacted me. She apologized for pressuring me to reconcile with my parents and admitted that she'd seen the toxic dynamics in our family for years but had been too afraid to speak up. We've started rebuilding our relationship, and it's been healing to have a family member validate my experiences. Looking back, I don't regret my decisions. Standing up for what I believe in and cutting off toxic relationships was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's led me to a happier, more authentic life. Rodney, Ethan, and I are planning a trip to Disney World next month, our first vacation as a family unit. It's a small step, but it feels like the beginning of something beautiful. To anyone going through similar family struggles, know that it's okay to prioritize your own well-being. Creating boundaries isn't selfish, it's